She accidentally texts a billionaire at 3 a.m. Then, his dark army arrives at her door. The clock struck 3, shrouding the world in darkness when Emma's phone buzzed like a swarm of angry bees. Her eyes fluttered open, heavy with sleep, but the allure of curiosity pulled her from her dreams. She squinted at the screen. Just a random number, who could it be? A rush of adrenaline tingled through her fingers, and before she knew it, she was typing. A simple text, right? Just a joke. She sent it off, unaware that those few words would send ripples through an empire built on shadows. Minutes later, the air turned electric. Emma felt a shiver crawl up her spine, a warning. The wind outside howled like a banshee, rattling shutters. Was it just the storm? Her heart raced as she glanced at her phone lit up with an incoming call. It was him. A name she barely recognized: Dorian Blackwood. But she knew about him, everyone did. Billionaire. Enigmatic. Cursed. Her stomach twisted with fear and excitement as she answered, a lump forming in her throat. Was this fate or folly? I received your message. His voice slid through the phone, deep and velvety, with an edge that could slice through glass. Are you alone? That question hung in the air, heavy with more weight than she could bear. A thought flickered in her mind: what if he knew? A glance at the darkened window sent another chill down her spine. Shadows danced outside like living creatures. Then came the knock. It echoed through the silence, louder than thunder. 3 sharp raps. Emma froze, her heart pounding so hard it felt like it might burst. She looked back at her phone, no missed notification, but dread dripping from every corner of her mind. Dark thoughts spiraled. Who was at the door? Emma? Dorian asked, concern threading with curiosity in his tone. But he didn't know. He didn't understand the gravity of her mistake. She glanced through the peephole, adrenaline choking her breath. A group of men, clad in black, loomed on her doorstep, their faces obscured, eyes glinting with purpose. Before she could respond, shadows moved behind them, a collective force ready to pounce. Dorian's voice pulled her back to reality. Emma, listen to me. You've opened doors you can't close. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The pounding at the door intensified. It felt like the heartbeat of a monster hellbent on breaking into her world. Emma's breath came out in short gasps, fear creeping into her mind like poison. What have I done? The men shifted, tension thick enough to slice. She could almost hear their unspoken thoughts, a foreboding shroud that enveloped her. Emma, get away from the door. Dorian's tone was urgent now, a knife edge of panic slicing through the calm of stillness. But she couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. The world outside erupted into chaos as she twisted the doorknob, an instinct to understand her fate. The remains of sleep faded away as confusion and terror rushed in. Who were these men? And what was Dorian really capable of? As she stood frozen, grasping reality, uncertain shadows danced behind her. Did she really invite a dark army into her life? And what did it mean for her future? The door swung open, and Emma stumbled back, heart hammering in her chest. Twilight bled through the doorway, illuminating the silhouettes of the men with a grim light. They didn't enter but stood like a wall of muscle and menace, each breathing like a beast waiting to pounce. Emma, one of them spoke, his voice low and steady, as if he relished the power he held over her. We need to talk. She shook her head slightly, lips trembling. Talk about what? You can't just barge in here. Don't waste time, he shot back, irritation flaring in his tone. You sent him a message. You think it was a joke and now you're in deeper than you realize. In the back of her mind, Dorian's voice echoed with warning. The air between them was thick, a palpable energy sizzling like electricity. Emma's instinct screamed at her to run, but her legs felt glued to the floor. The wind outside howled again, as if the universe wanted her to take flight. But flight was no option with these men standing guard. Where's Dorian? She gasped, searching their faces for some shred of hope that he might swing in like a knight in shining armor. But their expressions remained dark, void of any reassurance. Dorian sent us, the first man said, taking a step forward, the muscles in his jaw tense. He can't come to the surface yet. This is too delicate. Her heart sank. Delicate? What does that even mean? Means we deal with threats that come knocking, especially ones that know valuable secrets, he replied, casting a glance at his comrades, all of whom seemed ready to spring into action. What secrets? I don't know anything. She shouted, her desperation palpable. They exchanged pointed glances. It's not who you are that concerns us. It's who you became the moment you sent that text. With that, the atmosphere shifted. She felt it crash over her like a wave, dragging her down. Dorian had called her earlier, a voice from another world. She had fired off one harmless joke, and in return, she cast a net over herself, ensnaring something vast and terrifying. Can we negotiate? I can call Dorian not an option. The man chuckled darkly. You've thrown him into a mess, and now you're part of it. We have to rectify your mistake. Rectify? Emma snapped, realizing the gravity of her situation. What does that mean? The man stepped forward, inhaling sharply. The only way you'll be free of this is to make a choice. You either come with us and face what you've unleashed, or you stay and put yourself and those around you in danger. Panic boiled in Emma's stomach, twisting like a coiled snake. She thought of her friends, her family, everything she'd ever known. I can't just leave. What will happen to them? He leaned closer, and for a split second, she almost believed there was a glimmer of sympathy in his eyes. If you don't come with us, you put them at risk. Before she could respond, the door creaked further, and a murmur of voices wafted from the hallway outside. An overwhelming sense of danger enveloped her, suffocating any sense of sanity. Her heart raced. The clock was ticking. Emma needed to decide fast. One pathway led into darkness, the other back into the fray of uncertainty. Either way, lives were at stake, and she was the key to whatever storm was brewing beyond her door. Choose, the man whispered, his voice like gravel dragging across the ground. With a final glance at her darkened apartment, doubt clashed with determination. What kind of world had she stumbled into? What lay waiting for her on the other side? And as she prepared to make her choice, somewhere within the shadows, a figure lurked, watching with anticipation. Emma swallowed hard, the gravity of the moment pressing down on her. Choices spun in her mind: stay and risk everything she cherished or leap into the unknown. The murmurs outside grew louder, a haunting chorus of whispered conversations that sent shivers down her spine. What if it's too late? She thought, her breath coming in short bursts. She locked eyes with the man blocking her escape. What if I refuse to go with you? What happens then? Your friends won't be safe, he replied, deadpan. The word struck her like a slap to the face. Think of them. Every instinct screamed to rebel against the pressure, to shout her defiance. But the weight of responsibility pressed on her chest, turning her thoughts into chaos. Out there, in the darkened hall, she could hear the faint sound of footsteps getting closer, shadows merging under the flickering lights. What do I have to do? The admission tasted bitter on her tongue. Just come with us, he replied, his tone shifting ever so slightly, almost coaxing. We'll explain everything. You'll understand just how deep this goes. Fear coursed through her veins like ice water as she glanced back into her apartment. Memories flashed before her eyes, her friends laughing, her family gathered for dinner, and Dorian's warm smile. Could she really abandon all of that for a world cloaked in danger and secrecy? A sudden crash echoed down the hallway, making her jump. The tension in the men surrounding her heightened. They readied themselves, muscles coiling tighter as the sound of more footsteps approached, heavy boots thudding on the wooden floor. She caught a flicker of panic in their eyes, a hint that something was amiss. What was that? Emma looked around, alarmed. Her senses were wired, every nerve ending on edge. Time's running out. The man hissed, his voice sharp. We need to move now. Why? She demanded. What's out there? Just then, a shadowy figure emerged at the edge of the doorway. A tall man with an air of authority steps into the half-light, his features hidden under a dark hood. An unsettling chill danced along Emma's spine. Reagan, the man at the door stated, his voice low and commanding. You should have handled this sooner. Emma's heart raced. The newcomer had a presence that seemed to suck the breath out of the room, and panic surged as she tried to assert control. What do you want from me? She yelled, desperate and defiant. Your choices have consequences, Emma, Reagan replied, his voice smooth like silk but laced with menace. And now, you've entered a game far beyond your understanding. Before Emma could respond, the flicker of lights dimmed, plunging them into semi-darkness. She felt a prickling at the base of her neck, a sensation that something terrifying was drawing closer. Her instincts screamed at her to run, to flee toward safety, but stepping back into her apartment felt like stepping into the jaws of death. Choose. The first man repeated once more, urgency palpable. The walls closed in, shadows stretched and twisted around her, and the weight of the unknown pressed heavily on her chest. She had to make a decision, but the stakes were incomprehensibly high. Emma hesitated, heart racing. As the darkness deepened, she stole one last glance around, a final heartbeat of safety before stepping into the abyss. Okay, I'll go with you, she declared, hoping against hope she would find answers on the other side, and as she turned to leave, a loud crash echoed from behind her, rattling everything in its path. The dread in the pit of her stomach deepened, matching the fear in her throat. What had she just unleashed? As Emma stepped into the shadows, she felt the air thicken around her. She was leaving behind everything she knew, everything that had defined her. The weight of her choice lodged like a stone in her throat, but terror pushed her forward. The hall was dark, only the flickering emergency lights marking their path as the men moved stealthily around her. Reagan trailed behind, his presence weighing heavily, a silent predator watching for any sign of weakness. Where are we going? Emma asked, her voice shaky, punctured by anxiety. She tightened her grip on the strap of her bag, the familiar weight comforting but tainted now with uncertainty. Reagan answered cryptically, to a place where your questions will be answered if you survive the night. Survive, the word clung to her thoughts. The echo of the crash still thudded in her mind, warning her that whatever waited ahead might not only challenge her perception of reality but threaten her very life. They rounded a corner, and she caught sight of several more men. Each was sharply dressed, with an unsettling calm that sent her heart racing. Was this a rescue mission, or something more sinister? Panic twisted in her gut. Reagan, one of them said, raising an eyebrow. Is she really the one? Emma's choices will determine the outcome for us all, he replied, casting her a knowing look that sent chills up her spine. She drew a shaky breath. What kind of choice? What does that even mean? Silence. Reagan snapped, and the echo of his command finally made her shiver. Just then, another crash thundered from behind them, reverberating through the air like a heartbeat. Emma froze, her eyes wide with fear as it dawned on her, the chaos was closing in. With every footstep they took, the tension mounted, the atmosphere charged with the energy of a brewing storm. She could feel the shadows around them shifting, dark forms slithering closer, as if they sensed her uncertainty and confusion. Without warning, bright lights blazed ahead, revealing a labyrinth of concrete corridors. Reagan gestured for her to enter, but she hesitated, glancing over her shoulder. Her instincts screamed that something was wrong. A low growl resonated from the darkness. It sent a jolt through her entire body, a noise that was far too menacing to ignore. "What is that?" Emma gasped, unable to conceal the fear in her voice. Reagan's face hardened, and in that moment, she saw it, genuine concern etched into his features. "We need to go. Now." He shoved her forward, urgency driving each movement as they raced down the hallway. The pounding footsteps grew louder, mixed with frenzied whispers. It was a chaotic symphony of unease closing in. The group burst through a door at the end of the hall, and Emma stumbled in, gasping at the new reality unfolding in front of her. A large, dimly lit room spilled with high-tech gear screens flickering ominously, maps marking locations she didn't recognize. "What is this place?" she breathlessly asked, spotting a massive monitor flashing red alerts. Reagan turned to her, his expression suddenly grave. "You've become part of something that goes beyond your understanding. They're coming for you, and they won't stop until they find what you don't even know you have." Realization hit like a punch. "What do you mean?" Before he could answer, the lights flickered violently, plunging them back into darkness, then slashed the air open with blinding brightness. The noise outside turned into an all-consuming rumble. "Get ready!" one of the men shouted, now gripping a heavy firearm with fierce determination. Emma's heart thundered in her chest as she stared at the chaos outside the door. She felt the very ground around her quake with impending danger. "Who's coming?" she yelled, her voice rising above the tension, but the answer remained locked behind pursed lips. And as the door shook from violent impacts, echoes of desperation filled the chamber. What exactly had she just walked into? The door rattled violently against its frame, each thud resonating like a countdown in Emma's chest. Her body was frozen in place, caught between instinct and disbelief. She could hear the men in the room shuffling, their nerves layered beneath a steel exterior. Faces were tight and grim, a far cry from the calm that had initially unnerved her. Reagan moved swiftly to the door, positioning himself as a barrier. "Keep away from here," he warned the others, eyes darting to the monitor as if it could speak to him. Lines of red on the screen blinked faster, pulsing like a heartbeat against the urgency of the moment. Emma's breath quickened. It felt impossible this couldn't be happening. The surrealism of her surroundings churned in her stomach. Just hours ago, she was living a typical life, and now she found herself entrenched in a nightmare that made no sense. Outside, guttural growls began to echo, clawing at her sanity. It was a sound that clawed beneath her skin, sending shivers down her spine. It was angry, hungry, something utterly feral. She dared to take a step closer to the window, teeth biting into her lip, curiosity mixing with fear. Reagan's voice broke through the chaos. "They're here. Brace yourselves." His command felt like a tether, pulling her away from the window just as shadowy figures began to amass outside, monstrous silhouettes, with glowing eyes that pierced the dark. They weren't just here for her, they were here to hunt. "Who are they?" she whispered, heart racing as it dawned on her. She might be the prey in a game much larger than her comprehension. "They're part of an organization that'll stop at nothing to retrieve what was stolen." Reagan's tone shifted. It was a blend of fear and urgency. "You need to understand, Emma. You've been chosen, and they believe you hold something essential." The man beside him fumbled with a weapon, mumbling about barricades. Emma's mind spun. What could she possibly hold that was so important? She was just an ordinary woman. Her life had been a mundane parade of coffee runs and deadlines. "I don't have anything," she exclaimed, the panic spilling over. "You're all mistaken." Reagan leveled a hard stare at her. "You're mistaken if you think this is a choice for you to make. They will take what they want, whether you're willing or not." Suddenly, the lights flickered again, and the air crackled with an energy that screamed danger. The door trembled once more, the sound of wood groaning as it strained against the weight on the other side. Emma's heart raced faster, each beat an urgent plea for escape. With a loud bang, the door splintered under the assault, fissures spiderwebbing across the surface. Reagan stepped back, a gun in hand, ready prepared to confront whatever force would enter. And then the door burst open, crashing against the wall with a deafening roar as men in dark gear flooded in. Their visors reflected none of the fear that swam in the growing crowd behind them. Emma's breath caught in her throat, the reality crashing down like heavy rain. All she could see were shadows, figures shifting with purpose. They were hunters, and she was their prey. Run! Reagan's voice shouted above the chaos, propelling her forward just as fingers grappled for her, but in the melee, something cold brushed against her arm, a hand, firm and unyielding, grabbing her with unrelenting force. The world around her spiraled, her mind racing to comprehend the many questions circling her thoughts. Why is this happening? What do they want? Emma gasped, twisting in fright, staring into the eyes of her captor. Emma, the figure said, voice both an echo and a command, you'll find out soon enough. Just then, the monitor erupted in frantic alerts, a blaring warning that seemed to shake the very foundation of the room. Amidst the commotion, a chilling new revelation settled in her bones. The battle for her life was only just beginning. Who was she becoming, and at what cost? The grip on Emma's arm tightened as she was yanked backward into the chaos. It was a whirlpool of bodies, shouting, and desperation. Her heart was a wild drum in her chest, pounding against the cold, ghostly hand holding her. She twisted and pulled, her breath hitching, trying to break free. Let me go. She gasped, but her voice was drowned in the storm of panic. The dark figure who held her didn't flinch, his visor obscuring any flicker of compassion. He carried an aura of impenetrability that sent cold tendrils of fear crawling up her spine. Reagan was shouting orders, trying to coordinate the frantic movements of the men around him. Get her to safety. He yelled, eyes darting like a hawk. The urgency in his tone cut through the chaos, fueling Emma's resolve. She needed to escape. Sudden explosions rattled the surroundings, echoing like thunderclaps. Glass shattered as bullets ricocheted off walls, sending shards raining down like deadly rain. One of the masked men fell, a pained grunt escaping his lips as another stepped over him, unfazed. Stop fighting. The man holding Emma demanded, his voice low but sharp. You're just making it worse. Worse? Emma's mind reeled. How could this get worse? They were being hunted, and every instinct screamed to run. She hadn't done anything wrong. What had she gotten herself into? A flash of silver caught her eye as a weapon went off near Reagan, the shot ringing sprightly against her ears. Focus, Emma. Reagan's voice sliced through her haze. Trust me. Before she realized what was happening, the man holding her released her arm and pushed her away from the fray. She stumbled backward, almost collapsing as she tried to regain her footing, but she wouldn't let fear take over. She sprinted toward Reagan, her lifeline in the storm of attackers and chaos. Reagan's blazing eyes met hers as he shouted, "This way." Anxiety plastered his face, but there was resolution, too. She dashed after him, weaving in and out of chaos. Out of the corner of her eye, she noticed a flash of movement. One of the dark-clad figures lunged toward her, hand outstretched and hungry for her. Time slowed, and Emma's heart raced as she felt every pulse echoing from her neck to her fingertips. She ducked, barely avoiding his reach, but she could feel the cold brush of his breath against her skin. Reagan! She screamed, the sound of her own voice a desperate plea. With a sharp turn, Reagan was there, his gun drawn and aimed with deadly precision. Keep moving. He yelled, his finger on the trigger, very aware of the peril they were in. They zigzagged through rooms, the noise behind them a cacophony of destruction and rage. Just as they turned to the hallway, Emma felt a crash behind her, another door being flung open. She could sense the chaos trailing only steps behind, every instinct screamed for them to seek refuge. Looking around, her mind raced for an escape route. A small door caught her attention. It was marked as a storage room, unassuming in the chaos but hopefully offering cover. In they dove, barely slipping inside just as another barrage of bullets came tearing through the hallway, the air shrieking around them. Panting, they found themselves swallowed in darkness, surrounded by shadow and the musty scent of old machinery. Emma leaned against the door, its surface cool against her burning skin. "What do we do now?" she gasped, trying to quiet her racing heart. Reagan took a moment, his breath steadying. "We wait and gather information. They won't know we're here." There was a sudden quiet, making Emma hopeful, but it felt too eerie. "Reagan," she whispered, scanning the dim room for signs of danger. "What did you mean when you said I was chosen?" "Chosen for what?" The silence was thick, pregnant with implications. Shadows danced closely, and whispers echoed from beyond the thin walls. The lurking unknown loomed ever larger, but she could feel the weight of the world closing in. Before Reagan could respond, the door rattled violently, just as it had before, knocking her breath away. "Emma," he said, voice low and urgent, "get ready." The stakes had escalated, and she was submerged in a web she had no power over, teetering on the edge of a revelation that might cost her everything. What had really been taken, and why was she pulling the strings of this terrifying game? With a deafening bang, the door shuddered against its frame, threatening to burst open. Emma's heart leaped into her throat, pounding out a frantic rhythm that matched the chaos outside. She held her breath, eyes wide as she pressed back against the cold wall, hoping to melt into the darkness. Reagan's eyes were fierce, focused on the door as if willing it to remain shut, a barrier between them and whatever horror lay beyond. "Stay close," he whispered, pulling out his gun again, fingers steady against the grip. The quiet was a trick, a deceptive calm before the inevitable storm that mirrored the tumult of her thoughts. "Reagan," she said, her voice barely a whisper, "if I'm chosen, what does that mean? What did you get me involved in?" He exhaled, glancing briefly at her. "Not now. Survival first." The words felt like matches struck in the dark flashes of light that revealed more questions than answers. "Chosen?" The word echoed deep within her, twisting in her belly. She barely knew anything about this world, and now she was supposed to play a role in it. What was the plan? The door rattled again, more violently this time. "They're coming," Reagan warned, tightening his grip. Emma's whole body tensed. She could sense the predators on the other side, their impatience growing, ready to pounce. Suddenly, there was a loud crack, and the door splintered in the middle, sending a wave of hot air and dust into the tiny storage space. The ashy outlines of shadows loomed over them like dark specters. Emma's stomach dropped as she blinked against the sudden bright glare of flashlight beams cutting into the darkness. They were found. "No!" Emma whirled toward Reagan, her fear blooming into panic. In one desperate motion, he shoved her deeper into the room, their bodies pressing against the stacks of old crates and machinery. "Stay quiet. I'll handle this." Emma bit her lip, forcing the panic down. There was no time for doubts. She had to trust him. She crouched low, hiding behind a rusting generator, breath shallow. The air was electric with tension. Voices erupted outside the door, deep and commanding, filled with an authority that made her instinct scream. "Search everywhere. She's here. I can sense it." Emma's heart raced. Who were they looking for? How did they know she was there? Another crash erupted as a figure broke through the door, sending shards flying across the darkened room. A tall man, towering and menacing, stood there, scanning their hiding place with hungry eyes, but as he stepped farther inside, Reagan lunged from the shadows, gun raised, the moment stretching impossibly long before he squeezed the trigger. The sound echoed in the cramped room, a sharp crack of force meeting flesh. The man fell, blood splattering the walls like an unholy canvas. Emma gasped, covering her mouth as nausea rolled in waves. She'd never witnessed anything like this, the stark reality painted in shades of violence. Get ready to move. Reagan hissed, urgency lacing his tone. Before she could respond, more footsteps echoed from the hallway, growing closer. It's not over, he warned through gritted teeth. Emma's muscles ached with tension. They needed a plan, they needed to think fast. What had started as a chaotic night had spiraled into a nightmare, and she was caught in the middle. Why had she been chosen? What awaited them beyond that door? The answers danced just out of reach, and as Reagan prepared to move, a new voice broke through the chaos, ringing clear and cold. Bring her to me. Emma froze. The ominous command sent a chill down her spine. Who were they demanding? What unseen power was orchestrating this madness? The game had changed, and she was no longer just a player, she was the prize. Run! Reagan urged, shattering the silence as he broke into motion. With fear morphing into determination, Emma sprinted after him into the unknown, every step echoing her growing dread. What awaited them in the shadows? Was escape even possible, or was something worse waiting just around the corner? They ran, the sound of their footsteps pounding against the concrete floor, echoing like gunshots in the night. Reagan led the way, a beacon of urgency in the dim light, his body tense, every limb coiled like a spring. Emma struggled to keep up, her legs heavy with fear and adrenaline. She could hear them behind her, the hunters moving with a predatory grace that made her skin crawl. Left! Reagan barked, veering suddenly down a narrow passageway. Emma barely had a moment to adjust before she followed him into the darkness, breathless and bewildered. The passage was cramped, tunnels of old pipes and metal half hidden in the shadows. The air felt stale, clinging to her skin like a wet blanket, and with each second, the sense of dread deepened. Who were they? And why was she chosen? As they rounded a corner, a flicker of movement caught her eye. Reagan stopped short, arms raised protectively in front of her. Emma pressed against the wall, her heart hammering against her ribcage as a figure emerged from the gloom. It was a woman, clad in black tactical gear, her face obscured by a mask. The dim light glinted off the side of her weapon, a sleek rifle aimed directly at Reagan. You should have run when you had the chance, the woman drawled, her voice a mix of menace and mockery. Reagan's jaw tightened. We're not finished here, he replied, each word deliberate, unwavering. Emma felt something shift in the air, a shift that anchored a surge of courage deep within her gut. Maybe she was part of this madness, and maybe she had some power to fight back, after all. Reagan, she urged, we can't let her capture us. There has to be something, the woman scoffed, the sound resonating in the tight space. You think she is going to save you? You're just bait. Nothing more. Emma's heart sank. The realization hit her hard. She was being used. Just then, the piercing screech of a warning siren wailed through the corridors, slicing through the tension. The woman's eyes widened, her composure slipping for a split second. Damn it! They know we're here. She glanced between Reagan and the exit behind them, clearly weighing her options. It was a split-second decision, but Emma felt time pressing heavily against her. We have to make a move. She yelled, adrenaline overriding her fear. Without thinking, she darted past Reagan, aiming for the light at the far end of the tunnel. Emma, wait! Reagan shouted, but she was already in motion, racing toward the exit where the air was cooler, alive with possibility. The woman was close behind, furious now, but Emma's fear transformed into a powerful surge. She could almost feel the warm tendrils of freedom wrapping around her. The doorway loomed ahead, bright and tantalizing, but with a burst of motion, the woman lunged, tackling Emma to the ground. The two women collided on the hard floor, Emma's breath escaping in a whoosh. No! Reagan's voice echoed from further away, filled with an urgency that ignited something fierce inside Emma. Emma twisted, finding herself face to face with the masked woman. Rage and desperation coursed through her. Get off me! With one swift motion, she kicked, her foot connecting sharply with the woman's stomach, sending her sprawling back. Emma scrambled to her feet, a wild instinct propelling her forward. Run, Emma! Reagan blasted past them, gun raised, pulling the trigger without hesitation. More shots followed as he turned to face the incoming threat from behind the gang that had chased them, now appearing like ghosts in the dim light. Emma's heart raced as she flew through the doorway just as she heard the gunfire erupt, the air thick with chaos. She couldn't look back, not now. Not with the weight of their fate hanging in the balance. Outside, the moon bathed the alley in iridescent light, but she couldn't shake the feeling of being hunted. Reagan! She shouted through the night, needing to reconnect with him, to know they were still a team. Over here. His voice cut through the shadows, guiding her beyond scattered debris. As she ran toward him, she glanced back, anxiety tightening her chest. But as they regrouped, another figure emerged from the shadows, and the night twisted once more. A tall silhouette, cloaked in authority, stood in their path. The air crackled with electricity, a familiar coldness washing over Emma. "Stop right there." It was a voice she recognized from her deepest fears, the same voice that had commanded them to capture her. Emma's chest tightened as she stared into the darkness, realizing that whatever was coming next was only just beginning. The game had taken a new turn, one that threatened to expose her deepest secrets and reshape her future forever. What would they do now? And just like that, the weight of their choices pressed down sharply as uncertainty loomed. Was there still hope left, or were they too late to save themselves from the monster hunting them down? The figure stepped into the light, revealing a man with piercing eyes that seemed to swallow the darkness around him. There was an unsettling calmness about him, a predator playing casually with its prey. He wore a tailored suit that looked far too pristine for this grim alley. Emma felt that icy grip of fear tighten around her heart. "Emma," he said, his voice smooth like silk but laced with steel, "you know I've been looking for you." Reagan pulled her back, positioning himself protectively in front of her. "Stay away from her," he shouted, fists clenched. The man smirked, amusement dancing in his cold gaze. "You don't get it, do you? She's not in danger, she's the last piece of a very important puzzle." Emma's mind raced. What was he talking about? Was he part of the same group hunting her? The flickering streetlight overhead cast shadows that danced over his face, making him look even more ominous. "Reagan, we need to go," she urged, panic creeping into her voice as she felt the tension rise between them. But Reagan stood firm, eyes narrowed, facing the man as if he could single-handedly hold back a storm. "Leave her out of this," he growled, taking a step forward, fully prepared to fight if necessary. "And why would I do that?" The man's smile was predatory, and he leaned slightly closer. "Emma is special. She has something that belongs to me." Emma shivered, grasping the edge of Reagan's jacket for support. I don't know what you're talking about." "Oh, but you do," he replied, his voice low. "In time, you'll understand. You'll thank me for what I'm about to show you." Reagan tensed, his finger twitching near his weapon. Before he could respond, a rumble echoed through the alley, the unmistakable sound of approaching vehicles. Emma's heart dropped. They were surrounded. "Your friends are here," the man said with a thin smile, stepping back as a series of black SUVs rolled to a stop at the mouth of the alley. Men in dark suits poured out, their movements sharp and efficient, like a well-oiled machine. The atmosphere crackled with an electric tension, the air thick with impending violence. "Run!" Reagan shouted, grabbing Emma's arm and yanking her into motion. They sprinted deeper into the alley as the suits fanned out, weapons drawn. Emma's breath hitched, every footfall echoing in her ears, each darker than the last. They rounded a corner, the night closing in around them, but freedom felt further away with each passing second. She could hear shouting, the footsteps of the hunters gaining ground behind them, relentless as wolves. Something glinted in the peripheral, an open door, barely visible under a flickering neon sign. "In there!" Emma screamed, urging Reagan towards the light. They ducked inside, slamming the door behind them, hearts pounding. "Where are we?" Emma gasped, her eyes adjusting to the dim interior of a small, cluttered bar. The air was musty, filled with the scent of spilled beer and sweat. Reagan quickly scanned the room, muscles taut. "We need to find a way out." As they crept through the crowded space, voices mixed with laughter, but none noticed the tension etched on their faces. But Emma couldn't shake the growing feeling of being marked, like prey steering too close to a predator's den. Suddenly, the door burst open, and a figure filled the doorway, a twisted version of the man from the alley, flanked by his men, weapons drawn. The cheerful ambience dropped like a stone, replaced by gasps and whispers. "Nowhere to run, my dear Emma," the man declared, eyes sparkling with malice. "It's time for your awakening." Emma felt the weight of his words clawing at her. She was trapped. Whatever had been mislaid could no longer stay hidden. Panic washed over her, but desperation brought clarity too. "Reagan," she began, but then the power went out, plunging them into darkness. Sounds of chaos erupted instantly. Emma felt Reagan next to her, tense and alert. Her heart raced. Could this be the moment everything changed? "Now's our chance," Reagan hissed, and instinct kicked in. They both moved before the darkness could swallow them, racing toward the back of the bar, but as they reached the hallway, the voice of the man echoed through the shadows, chilling her to the bone. "Run all you want, but I will find you. You can't escape your destiny, Emma." What destiny? What did he know that she didn't? As they bolted through the door at the end of the hallway, Emma's mind raced. She had to uncover the truth before it was too late. Just as they burst into the alley behind the bar, a piercing scream shattered the night. Fear coursed through her veins. Something terrible was coming. What was waiting for her in the shadows of her past? Emma glanced back at Reagan, her eyes wide with uncertainty. "Stay close," he urged, but her instincts were already kicking in. There was no time to hesitate. They had to uncover the connection that bound her to this nightmare. As they sprinted towards the next corner, the looming darkness seemed to close in tighter, taunting them with its secrets. What awaited just beyond their vision would change everything. And then suddenly the ground beneath them shifted, giving way as a trapdoor swung open, pulling them into an abyss of uncertainty. What lay in the depths? Emma let out a surprised gasp as her feet slipped through the opening, her stomach lurching. Sinking into the shadowed depths felt like being swallowed whole. The world above vanished, sounds muffled by distance and chaos. With a heavy thud, she landed on a cool, hard floor, Reagan tumbling in beside her, instincts sharp even in the dim light. "You okay?" he murmured, his eyes scanning the cramped space, every muscle coiled tight. "Yeah," she breathed out, tension still coursing through her. But there was no time to linger. They had to move, dangers lurked above. The dim light from the opening illuminated just enough for them to see they were in a narrow, concrete corridor, lined with flickering fluorescent lights that buzzed like angry bees. "Down this way," Reagan directed, his voice steady despite the chaotic pounding of their hearts. Emma followed closely, her legs moving on sheer adrenaline. They turned a corner, more echoes of chaos reverberating above them, distant and ominous. What was happening? Was this the end of her ordinary life? "Reagan, what did that man mean? What am I supposed to have?" Emma pressed, desperate for clarity, for something solid to hold onto amidst the swirling shadows. "Focus on getting to safety first," he said, glancing back. "You'll know soon enough. I can't do this without knowing." Panic rose like a balloon about to burst. In that moment, a deep growl resonated through the concrete, menacing and close. The shadows seemed to pulse, the darkness thickening. Reagan's hand tightened on her arm. "Run!" They sprinted down the corridor, heartbeats merging into a syncopated rhythm, but ahead lay a fraying door. "There!" Emma directed, urgency propelling her forward. They reached the door, slamming against it as they fought to pry it open. With a forceful shove, it flew open to reveal a dimly lit chamber filled with blinking screens and towering walls of machinery. Monitors displayed red alerts, their distress flashing like warning signs. "He's going to find us," Reagan said, breathless and strained. "Who?" Emma shouted, panicking again, her eyes darting around as if answers clung to the walls. "The one who wants you. We need to find a way out," he proclaimed, urgency sharpening his features, but fear was swallowed by a new sensation, determination. She was through running blind, through being treated as mere prey. "Wait. This place, what if we can use it?" Emma exclaimed, a flicker of hope igniting. "It's designed for something." Reagan looked at her, realization dawning in his eyes. "You're right. If we can turn the systems against them before they could develop a plan." Footsteps thundered down the corridor outside, machine-like, relentless. "Now or never." He broke through her thoughts. They dove to the nearest terminal, Reagan pounding keys with urgency, his focus sharp. Emma watched over his shoulder, her heart racing not just with fear but with a surge of empowerment. "We need to find out what that man meant." "Let me work," he commanded, urgency rippling through him. The monitors flickered wildly, lines of code racing on the screens. She felt like they were unlocking secrets, unveiling destinies hidden in the shadows. "Got something?" Reagan exclaimed, his fingers flying as he accessed files that revealed maps, names, threats, even her own scheduled appearances in ominous plans. "Emma, you need to see this." She stared at the screen, her breath catching in her throat. "I'm part of some twisted prophecy." The words spilled out, laden with incredulity. "No. You're a key. A valuable one. Whatever is happening, it revolves around what you hold within," he said urgently, directing her attention back to reality. "Right now, we need a plan." But fear loomed darker than ever, shadows creeping along the walls. A sudden crash echoed from behind. They had to move before the term for gathered enemies broke into the room. Reagan accessed the central control, typing furiously, frustration mounting. Come on then." With a final keystroke, the room exploded to life. Alarms blared, lights flickered violently. The systems whirred, nearby doors sealing shut and locks engaging. "Let us go." Emma grabbed his arm, pulling him toward another exit, their feet pounding against concrete floors, heartbeats a steady cadence of purpose. Outside, another series of figures lurked, shadows in pursuit. But Reagan knew these corridors better now. "This way!" he shouted, guiding them through twisting hallways, instincts honed for survival. As they pushed through the next door, a blast echoed from the one they'd just exited. "They're close," Reagan urged. They charged through dim-lit passages, every second stretching taut as they darted between rooms, drawn deeper into the complex. They finally burst through another door, finding themselves on a dim, abandoned catwalk high above sprawling machinery. Below, dark figures scoured the depths. Emma stumbled, gripping the railing hard. "We can't go back. We won." Reagan turned to her, heat in his gaze. "What we have now is knowledge. They want you. Let us use that against them." "How?" she asked, fighting the rising desperation that threatened to drown her in fear. He met her eyes, a fire igniting between them. "Show them you're not afraid. You've got something they need. Control it, use it against them." Emma felt a surge of strength surge through her as she nodded, resolve taking hold. "Let us do this." With newfound clarity, she stepped forward, ready to confront whatever horrors lurked below. She would reclaim her life, redefine her narrative. The shadows would not define her any longer. Together, they descended into the storm, a fierce unity forged in chaos. Emma took the first step, rewriting her own fate in the face of darkness. And as they faced the unfolding chaos together, they knew, the truth would come to light, and whatever awaited them they would confront it side by side. Together, she whispered, confidence solidifying in her chest, while the looming threat climbed closer, the game shifting once more. It was time to end the chase and seize her destiny once and for all. Now emerged, the final showdown awaited. But this time, it wouldn't just be about survival, it would be about reclaiming what had been stolen from her and the power of standing strong in the storm. You need to subscribe now. Hit that red button immediately so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. This is the moment to show your support. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and help us continue bringing you these thrilling tales. Flood the comments section with your thoughts, theories, and reactions to this explosive ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support means everything. Let's keep building this awesome community together.